Let's start with you first, Adam. At times like this, again, anyone who turns around and tries to shit-can this country about our sense of community, about our sense of togetherness, where no one cares who you voted for, what you believe in, where you sit on culture wars, whether you do or don't watch The Bachelor, whether you care about maths or not, which footy team you go for, what colour your skin is. We have an army of people who get off their backside, throw on the yellow, throw on the orange, and they run to help people. I always take incredible pride out of these moments, and I can tell you what, there is obviously the most anguished people are those who lose their homes. Very closely second are the people who are trying to save those homes.
Yeah, well, it was interesting seeing some of the comments by Richard Di Natale and Adam Bant today, the guys from the Greens. It was certainly in poor taste. I mean, we saw footage there of Gladys Berejiklian and Scott Morrison and John Barilaro and others touring the fire-ravaged areas. The most important thing to do at this time is the emergency response. It's about the dissemination of information for those who are affected by the disaster themselves or the event itself. It's about providing information to people so they know where to go safely. It's about giving information to loved family members who are concerned and making sure that we're recognising and supporting the efforts of those workers, volunteers or otherwise, particularly in emergency services, who are trying to respond to that emergency. Any commentary that needs to be made about the cause or effect of that disaster or anything around the periphery should be kept to a later date. But I think all airways need to be kept clear as much as possible for that emergency response, to get the right information out and to be able to be empathetic and compassionate to those people who are suffering the hardships. Talking about the causes of a fire, I mean, you've given a very good overview at the start of the show, but talking about the causes, that's something for discussion later on, whether it's parliamentary debate or talkback shows, but in the weeks and months after the event. I just think it's completely insensitive and lacking of empathy for those suffering tragedy.
Tina, what do you think about that cartoon that's going to be in tomorrow's Financial Review, the cartoon that basically has picked up on what Admiral Barry's had to say over there at Channel 2, which is basically arm the walls, it's all about climate change, and therefore he's denier-in-chief, despite the fact we're signed up to Paris, adhering to Paris, something that even the Conservatives in his own party don't like. What do you think of that? Literally drawn as he was hugging people in an evacuation centre today.
Paul, this makes me incredibly angry. I think it's just so offensive to the Prime Minister and to all of us. I mean, we had our State Council at the weekend, a very important time for the Liberal Party, and I can't remember the last time a Prime Minister dropped everything, didn't attend, to go up and see these people. Okay, I mean, it's just a horrible cartoon that should not be published. You know, there's people like Karen McNamara's auntie and uncle from Nimboida up near Grafton, Neil and Margaret McNamara, who lost their home. I can tell you, Paul, they're not saying, is it climate change, or they're very grateful the Prime Minister is up in those areas, and I suggest they redraw that cartoon for tomorrow's paper.
They won't. Instead, it'll probably win an award. We all know how this game works. Let's sort of park for a second the whole climate change politics and the distasteful nature of all of this stuff. What have you thought of the past couple of days about how, I mean, sadly, in many ways there's sort of tropes that the media and politicians sort of react in times like this. The emergency services do very well as well, but obviously terms like catastrophic being sort of thrown around as the official language. What's been your observation?
Look, I agree with Adam that it's wrong in the first sort of 48 hours, and frankly, while the fires are still burning, to be talking about the reasons behind it and the politics that drive it. It's all about the emergency response. It's about getting the information to as many people as possible, as quickly as possible. And your old medium of radio is often the best way for that to occur, particularly in regional areas. And obviously, it's a very good thing that Sky has gone with bushfire coverage. You know, there are a lot of people in regional areas who rely on it. Catastrophic. The most memorable thing that I saw in my entire best part of sort of 10, 15 years in government was going to King Lake just after the Black Saturday bushfires in 2009, where it was a lunar landscape that each tree, there was no foliage, no branches. It was like someone had stuck burnt matchsticks in the ground. There was ash about 6 or 8 inches deep. and not a single noise, no birds, footsteps into the ash made no echo, and it was the most lunar landscape, lifeless landscape I've ever seen. So the idea that you could have a category that makes people think that if they don't act and get out of the way, that it could be a catastrophe. Having seen that, I'm actually quite comfortable with, but it has to be deserved for it to be classified in that way.
Yeah, absolutely. Look, I mean, my view is that you would prefer a situation where it was boy cried wolf than all of us crying about what the results of
That's
something
right. And
was.
something like that Black Saturday circumstance, they kind of knew 24 hours before that you had to get out of the way, but having seen its devastation, if you had have stayed, you would not have survived.
The gentleman who the Prime Minister was giving a hug to in some of that footage we were showing you before, an 85-year-old bloke by the name of Owen Whalen, he was evacuated from his home in Taree in the past couple of days. I just wanted to put a name to the face, and our thoughts are very much with him and his family. You've got to imagine how tough it is to be an older person going through something like this, and obviously a proud country bloke. They're not going to cry pretty easily, but clearly when the Prime Minister's there, it's flood of emotions, let alone cameras and all the rest of it that are around you. Just finally on the backburning stuff, as I said, I'll get into all the details, and if it tells the picture that people want to hear, fine, but if it's the one they don't want to hear, I'll still tell you the truth tomorrow about backburning, or hazard reduction as it's called now. But what about that thing that I mentioned at the start there, Adam, about the Caloundra situation where 1617 supposed to do some hazard reduction? One of the reasons, a minister's note revealed under Freedom of Information, this is the whole Right to Know campaign in real time, said that one of the reasons why it didn't happen was due to environmental factors. Do you believe that there's more or less hazard reduction than we were, say, 10 years ago?
Well, there's miles less hazard reduction. I'm a person who grew up in the Blue Mountains in New South Wales, 50 or so kilometres west of Sydney, and I've seen the effects and lived through fires in the Blue Mountains many times. I've been there when hundreds of homes have been burnt, and I've put fires out myself in the Blue Mountains as part of fires coming up to your back doorstep. I know what it's like, and growing up in the Blue Mountains over decades, it was always a green element getting to the surface of policies and policy development about cutting back back-burning efforts in environmental efforts. But we know that the detrimental effects of not back-burning and not being fire-ready causes greater consequences to human life, to animal destruction and property destruction. Where I live now in Western Victoria, I've got to have a fire management plan. We've got firefighting equipment on the property. We're ready for fire, and part of that is making sure that you have your areas to help contain fires if they come through. And if government keeps adopting these policies, or governments keep adopting these policies of not supporting backburning for environmental reasons, we're going to see greater amounts of fuel on the ground they're going to help more fire spread. And I know we're not here to talk about climate change, but you can't tell me that there weren't fires 5 years ago, 20 years ago, 100 years ago and thousands of years ago. There's always been fires, and our ability to be able to help lessen the effects of fires, a part of that policy response has been backburning, and governments in their swamps in the capital cities and Canberra have put environmental flavours into the policies to stop backburning, and we see the continual effects of that when fires occur each and every year around this country.